Hello there and welcome to the most watched business show in the country. This is the Business Weekly Show here on the City TV and I am your host, Michael Obodu. Please follow me on Twitter at @mobodu. In the next 1 hour, I'll be bringing you a wrap of all the major business stories for the week. So if you're ready, let's go. I'm sure with the current economic situation and the whole conversation of seeking a bailout from the International Monetary Fund, IMF, a lot of Ghanaians will be keen on what is contained in this year's mid-year budget review. At least it will give us a fair idea of where the country is heading so we can better prepare for the remaining half of the year.
The fiscal policy measures which were captured in the 2022 budget to generate more revenues and undertake transformational projects have so far performed below expectation. The measures were expected to help generate about 100.52 billion Ghana cedis by the end of this year, but the first quarter results, which have been released, indicate that only 16.71 billion Ghana cedis has been raised, less than a quarter of the projected revenue. Citing the inability of the electronic transfer levy to rake in the budgeted revenue as an example, Chairman of the Mines and Energy Committee of Parliament, Atta-Akyea, said he expects the Finance Minister to introduce additional measures that will increase revenue, especially with the IMF coming on board in the upcoming mid-year budget review presentation.
That is a way of trying to review how the economy is performing, because you took a budget which is a mainstream budget and if you come and review it, how you've performed. I'm tempted to come to the conclusion that he's going to look at the revenue measures. For example, we know that the e-levy did not generate in Ghana what we were expecting. What is he going to do to ensure that we rake in some revenue so that we'll be able to tackle our developmental agenda? I think these are some of the concerns. As to the IMF program, it's not worked out yet. Is that the engagement is going on? So we can't sort of bank our hopes on it. We need to, have a firm program, agreements where the IMF will not tinker with our free senior high school. Are they going to say we should stop and the rest of it? If it's not going to be so, we come to normalcy and then the programs of the government will be rolled out.
On the issue of inflation, Atta-Akyea lamented the impact of global economic shocks on the rising inflation in the country. He contends that no country has been spared the fiscal implications of COVID-19 and the Russian-Ukraine war, and Ghana is not an exception. Currently, inflation stands at 29.8%. Still speaking to City Business News, Mr. Atta-Akyea said the economy can only bounce back when the global pressures lessen.
You want to test a child's body temperature. The child who has malaria will register a different body temperature than a child who has not gotten malaria. That's my analysis of the situation. This hour of day when we know that all the economies of the world are going through strain and stress, we talk about inflationary pressures that have been exacerbated well over. We are not having a very positive discussion because every situation will determine the ramifications. So from my perspective, the inflationary pressures we are discussing in Ghana have some externalities that we can't control. They call it in law force majeure. This is where we are. So if we eradicate the situation of the COVID situation worldwide, and also we do not have the Ukraine and the Russian war, I think the normalcy of the world will return. And in that normalcy, the economy can be affected.
Ahead of the presentation, we have been interacting with various industry players to pick their thoughts. We interacted with an economist, the Association of Ghana Industries (AGI), and the Ghana Chamber of Construction Industry. It's quite interesting, the varied expectations and opinions expressed.
The Minister of Finance, Ken Ofori-Atta, will appear before Parliament on Monday, July 25th to present the mid-year review of the budget statement and economic policy of the government and supplementary estimate for the 2022 financial year. The fiscal policy measures, which were captured in the 2022 budget to generate more revenues and undertake transformational projects, have so far performed below expectation. Among other things, the Finance Minister is expected to provide information on how revenue and expenditure had performed in the first half of the year and the country's current budget deficit figures. He is also expected to provide an update on the electronic transfer levy and how much it has accrued so far. With the government officially reaching out to the International Monetary Fund for support, the minister is also expected to make his first public comments on this decision after publicly stating that the country would not go to the IMF. Ahead of the presentation, many stakeholders have been sharing their expectations. The Association of Ghana Industries, for instance, is calling for a full review of the benchmark values reduction policy. The Institute for Statistical, Social and Economic Research is also calling for a reduction in the current charge rate of the electronic transfer levy. In a conversation with City Business News, economist with GCB Capital Limited, Courage Buti, underscored the need for government to strive to at least meet its deficit targets for this year.
Government should lay it bare what the issues are, what the revenue problems are, and then as an attempt to remain disciplined and send a good signal, and also to accelerate the negotiations with the IMF, probably tailor the expenditure to match the revenue so that we could at least, if not perform better, at least achieve the deficit target for the year. And that might mean that programs such as the social interventions, things like free SHS, I do not see it going away because one, it was started under the IMF program, and two, it is a program that directly tackles goal 4 of SDGs, really, that talks about universal access to basic education for everyone. I mean, IMF could not be seen as not supporting SDGs, really, and so they might not be calling for its maybe a discontinuation, but it needs to be looked at again, reviewed and streamlined so that probably the excess expenditures, or you look at the excesses in that program and how to trim it. Things like nurses training allowance and teachers training allowance. It is very obvious now that probably those are things that can go in the difficult times that we find ourselves. Those are things you can easily do away with and no one would die.
Benchmark values are reference values that the Customs Division of the Ghana Revenue Authority (GRA) uses in determining values that are imposed on imports meant for clearance at the country's ports. When government in 2019 announced the decision to reduce the benchmark values for some general goods by 50% and 30% on cars, the idea was to increase volumes of traffic at the port and ultimately increase government revenue. While importers and exporters, freight forwarders, as well as the Ghana Union of Traders Association praised government for how the decision reduced the cost of doing business, groups such as the Association of Ghana Industries (AGI) were concerned about the impact on the competitiveness of their products. In a bid to appease both industry and importers, government revised the discount values downwards to 30% for all goods and 10% for vehicles. But according to the CEO of the Association of Ghana Industries (AGI), Sechuma Kwabwa, more can be done. Here he is with his association's expectations ahead of the mid-year budget presentation on July 25, 2022.
I think at this stage, as far as industry is concerned, and we've already made inputs into the budget review, and we've mentioned a couple of areas, including the benchmark values, the fact that we want the benchmark values reviewed fully, and then also pay some attention to local manufacturers in terms of raw material exemption, duty, and all that. We've also talked about the need to have a stable macroeconomic environment, because if you don't, it actually affects all your operations. So that is one issue that we've really emphasized. We've also touched on a number of tax issues. We can't discuss all the details here, but we think that the tax regime should be supportive of industrial development, and this is very important. And then there are also specific interventions for some companies and some sectors within the manufacturing sector and industry sector. And I believe that as we go along, we will discuss all this in detail. But we normally have the opportunity of making a presentation to the Ministry of Finance on this. We've sent our inputs already, so we are waiting for such opportunity and highlight the key issues that you've mentioned.
Speaking to City Business News on the ongoing engagements with the International Monetary Fund (IMF), the CEO of the Association of Ghana Industries, Chuma Kwaba, noted that all stakeholders need to support government to secure a program that supports Ghana's economic growth in the long term.
I don't think that we should bastardize the idea of going to IMF. It's a bailout situation. It's sometimes become necessary that you have to swallow such pill. And then what is even more important is that the IMF will not come and solve your problems for you. It only probably come in to help with stability of your currency and stability of your macroeconomic environment. What is more important is beyond the IMF intervention, what we are able to do to sustain our economy in a very pragmatic way to ensure that we have our macroeconomic stability, to ensure that business can have a predictable environment, to ensure that businesses can grow, and then support our economy in the long term, so that when the IMF arrangement is out, we'll continue to be strong enough not to go back to IMF. I think that is more critical. And therefore, in our discussions, in our planning, in our thinking, we have to think in a way that enables us stay strong beyond the prescriptions of IMF.
Meanwhile, as government prepares for the mid-year budget review, the Ghana Chamber of Construction Industry expects to find details on government's plans to pay its members arrears owed them in the presentation. Contractors across the country have consistently lamented the impact of the non-payment by government, a situation they decry is further worsened by the current economic situation. Challenges with the economy compelled government to seek an International Monetary Fund bailout despite an earlier vocal stand against such a move. Chief Executive Officer of the Chamber, Emmanuel Cherry, believes getting their monies must be given all the attention it deserves as it has been long overdue.
Our expectation is government must pay us. We need money so that money will be circulating in the system. If money comes, any other things follows because we are hungry. Most contractors today are laying off workers. I know a contractor who has over 800 workers. 400 has been already laid off. Still considering others to follow. How do you call it? Go to Cocoa Board. Cocoa Board is owing contractors so huge amount of money. You see, if they should pay us now, there will be so much joy in the system. And then our road networks will be upgraded as well. We have poor drainage system in the country. Most has been given us has been awarded. But today, what do we see? Contractors are not on site because they are not getting the support from government. So government has a major role to play. Let's stay a while longer on the mid-year budget review because one of the major challenges of the government is its inability to raise enough revenue to make up for its expenditure. Tax analyst Francis Timoboy believes it is important to announce clear measures that will lead to the collection of more property and income taxes. According to him, the over-reliance on consumer taxes in the country is negatively impacting on government's ability to raise revenue as well as efforts at increasing the country's tax-to-GDP ratio.
The country's current tax-to-GDP ratio stands at 12%, which falls below the sub-Saharan African average of 16.5%. The low level of tax collected in the country has been a source of concern for the Minister of Finance, Ken Ofori-Atta. Mr. Ofori-Atta, in a press conference after the presentation of the 2022 budget last year, stated that out of about 18 million potential income taxpayers, only 2.4 million persons, approximately 8% of the total population, were registered as personal income taxpayers as of August 2021. The challenges with the volume and value of tax collected served as a catalyst for the introduction of the electronic transfer levy e-levy in the 2022 budget. But in an interview with City Business News on the matter, tax analyst Francis Timoboy noted that a rebalancing of Ghana's tax regime is needed to take the pressure off consumption taxes.
You see, taxation is based on some principles. If you consume, you pay consumption tax. If you earn income, you pay income tax. If you hold property, in other words, if you hold your wealth, you pay property tax. But then we have left these other elements of wealth and we are only focusing on consumption tax. We are even not too much paying attention to income tax, especially those earning income in the informal sector. So we should spread the concept across. Go to those who are holding wealth in the form of property, tax them. Those who are consuming it, introduce consumption tax. Those who are earning income, let them pay income tax. But all the time, if you focus on consumption tax, that's the problem. And we always say that Ghana's consumption tax of 60% to 40% is not helping the informal, the vulnerable. So possibly we need to rebalance the way our tax system operates. And I think that in the long term, we will benefit. Property tax is one. The exemption bill, which was withdrawn, possibly we need to go back.
Mr. Timor Boy further called for the scrapping and/or reduction of some of the taxes in the price build-up of fuel in the country to ease the burden related to fuel price hikes on Ghanaians.
I think, yes, if you look at our petroleum pricing build-up, the taxes to some extent are overloaded. A liter and you pay over 1 cedi 50 pesos or above is quite overloaded. And I think some of the taxes, from the way things are going, if I was the minister, I would rather reduce some of the taxes and then find other means of bringing back the tax. You see, the petroleum sector is essential sector, and anything that causes an increase in that sector almost cuts across everything. So yes, you can get a lot of money from that sector, but where you notice that its discipline effect is high, then you can, mitigate it a little bit. So I think that we can do something about it. Though government is going to find it difficult to, find other means of, funding its expenditure. But I think that the way the public sentiment is going, let's go into that line and see if we can cut it a little bit, so that at least consumers can also be freed a little.
Stabilizing the city is critical to ensuring a thriving economy. And to achieve this in the long term, economist Dr. Atta-Akyea wants the government to introduce more strategies to diversify the country's export base and increase domestic production.
The latest decision comes on the back of the fact that despite Ghana being one of the leading gold producers in the world, its reserves of gold at the central bank as at the end of 2021 was only 8.7 kilograms. According to Vice President Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia, the new policy decision for the Bank of Ghana to have the first right of refusal for all gold mined in the country forms part of efforts to position the central bank to build mineral reserves to stabilize the city. This means the central bank will purchase the gold at world market prices, and mining companies will export the portion that is not purchased by the central bank. Ultimately, once government accumulates enough gold, future borrowing and the local currency can be backed by gold. Reacting to government's new policy decision in an interview with City Business News, economist Dr. Patrick Esuming urged the government to introduce more strategies to diversify the country's export base and increase domestic production in its quest to stabilize the local currency in the long term.
If you want to stabilize the city long term, the city's problem is not a liquidity matter. The root cause is how much export you get versus how much import you are getting. If, we are producing the same quantity of gold and it's bringing us a certain amount of foreign currency, whether it is going to be taken up, the central bank will have the right of first purchase, or is going to be sold on the international market. It's not expected to change the amount of foreign currency we are getting. So let's get that clear. Then the issue is, we've been mining gold, and the key problems we've been discussing about what will solve the currency's problem is diversifying the export base and not trying to bring up some institutional arrangement about how it is purchased and how much we store or so on and so forth. I think if you don't broaden the base and diverse the base, we can't say that we solve the city's long-term problem. So for me, I don't see how that particular solution will hold. It might give some brief relief, but ultimately, if there's variety of sources of export earnings haven't changed, I don't think that we solve the city's problem. So, diversifying the export base and also increasing our domestic production, starting with agriculture and then agro-based processing, to ensure that we do a fair amount of import substitution, so that we're able to save on some of the things that we can produce locally, that we are spending a hard-earned foreign currency to import.
Let's turn our attention to the monetary policy rate. Some economists are projecting the rate will be maintained at the current 19% by the Bank of Ghana. The Monetary Policy Committee of the Central Bank earlier this week commenced its 107th regular meetings to review developments in the economy. These economists believe with the current slowdown in the growth rate and the recent increases in the MPR, the BOG ought to wait for the economy to experience the full effect of the move before adjusting the rate.
The monetary policy rate, which is of keen interest to individuals and businesses, does not only signal the rate at which the central bank will lend to commercial banks, it also influences average lending rates on loans to individuals and businesses. The rate was increased by 200 basis points to 19% in May 2022, following the 106th meeting of the Monetary Policy Committee. That was the second time in 12 months that the central bank increased the key rate by 200 basis points or more. With the continuous increase in the inflation rate, stakeholders are concerned that the Monetary Policy Committee will increase the rate again. Latest data from the Ghana Statistical Service shows that prices associated with food, transport and housing pushed the rate of inflation for June to hit 29.8%, a 2.2 percentage point increase compared to the 27.6% recorded in May. The 2.2 percentage points gap is the lowest increase recorded since February, indicating a slowdown in the inflation curve compared to previous months. As the Monetary Policy Committee of the Central Bank commences its 107th regular meetings today, economist Dr. Patrick Esuming noted that the policy rate is likely to be maintained at 19% by the Bank of Ghana.
On the economy side, you see that since their last meeting, the GDP number has been released, and the growth rate was weaker than we expected. It was certainly weaker than we recorded in the previous year, the same quarter last year. At the same time, you see that the inflation has increased again, but it appears that, the rate of increase in the inflation rate is slightly lower than we recorded before. The governor had expected that there will be some tapering off. Not to say that the rate of inflation will come down, but the rate of increase of the inflation rate was going to slow down. It appears that we're beginning to see that. So if you put these together, I don't expect that the Monetary Policy Committee should increase the interest rate again. I expect that they should keep the rate unchanged. They've increased it over the last two meetings, and we know that the current bout of inflation is not primarily driven by excess demand. It's more like a cost push, supply side. So from where I sit, I expect that they will keep the monetary policy rate unchanged while they observe. Because it's also expected that, with the discussion starting over an IMF program, there might be some additional fiscal consolidation happening. So that should help with the fighting of the inflation. So I don't expect that they will increase the policy rate again.
Meanwhile, management of the Tema Oil Refinery TOR says it has taken concrete steps to bring the country's premier refinery back to business within the next few months. In a newly released statement, the management of TOR said the government of Ghana, through the Ministry of Energy, had given TOR the go-ahead to negotiate a lease agreement to refine crude oil with a private investor, Decimal Capital Limited, whose proposal emerged as the most appropriate to meet the needs of the refinery among the host of proposals that were presented. This is expected to boost the local supply of refined oil products and help stabilize.
You see all of these global risks and the fact that IMF later this week would review downwards the global growth projection again, and then World Bank has already done so. It appears that demand for crude oil can actually be depressed at this time if the risk of recession materialize. And that could mean that the higher oil prices, peaking at around $127 per barrel, could start or begin to come down. And the pressure from that to inflation could also be maybe subdued a bit. And so despite the fact that collar is in place, despite the fact that a lot of other factors locally, supply chain related, could drive inflation higher at this point, there are equally factors that could bring it down, base effect being one, and crude oil price trending down in the last few days also being a part of it, right? And that's why I feel that inflation Bank of Ghana will feel vindicated at this point that the interventions they've had since beginning of the year, 450 basis point hike so far, plus the removal of the non-conventional interventions from the COVID era, are beginning to probably curtail inflation and slow down the rate of increase. And it's a matter of time that inflation will peak. For this reason, they will want to see or allow, the current interventions filter through the market a bit, and especially given that Ghana's growth for Q1 didn't really come out as expected.
Not everyone seems to agree with this position because the Institute of Economic Affairs, IEA, would rather the Monetary Policy Committee of the Bank of Ghana increases the monetary policy rate to 20 or 20.5%. But what could be the IEA's reason for this position?
As to how to position the policy rate, a number of factors have been taken into consideration. First, the last time in the past year that the policy rate, then at 14.5%, was higher than the inflation rate, then at 13.9%, was in January 2022. Since then, inflation has overtaken the policy rate, with the gap widening to 10.6 percentage points as of June. Second, the strong policy tightening carried out by the MPC recently may not have exerted its full effect yet, given the impact lag involved. Here, an important factor that is not readily available to us is the exact relationship between the policy rate adjustments and inflation. Third, it would appear that though inflation has risen consistently in the past year, the rate of increase in recent months, being 4.2, 4.0 and 2.0 percentage points respectively in April, May and June, shows a decelerating trend. Fourth, continued policy tightening by the major economies, particularly the US, continues to put pressure on developing and emerging market countries' currencies, including that of Ghana. Fifth, the MPC has the benefit of the forecast of the inflation outlook informed by the comprehensive data that may not be available to us. The forecast of the inflation outlook will be an important factor in the policy rate decision. Taking all the foregoing factors, both known and unknown, into consideration, we are minded to suggest that the MPC should increase the policy rate by a further 100 to 150 basis points, taking it to 20.0 to 20.5%. This adjustment will narrow down the inflation policy rate gap, although the real policy rate will still remain negative. Further, the adjustment will signal the MPC's unwavering commitment to fighting the inflation and bringing it under control. The adjustment will also send the right signal to and help calm the markets.
The ARB Apex Bank is targeting to mobilize 25 million Ghana cedis within 5 years as part of a strategic plan to raise its capital base. The move, officials say, will help rural banks lend more to their customers and also help invest in the IT infrastructure to enhance their services.
The capitalization requirement for rural banks was recently increased to 1 million Ghana cedis, but the ARB Apex Bank has for years had its capital adequacy ratio remain at 9 million Ghana cedis. This has posed challenges to how the ARB Apex Bank effectively renders its services to rural banks and other clients. Managing Director of the ARB Apex Bank, Alex Ewa, explains how the intervention will help their sector.
We've been discussing, and thanks be to God, our board has given us approval to go to our shareholders, that is the rural banks, so that within 5 years' time, we will mobilize some additional capital with a target of 25 million Ghana cedis, every year 5 million. And it is our belief that when we get it, that will help us to, lend more to the good customers of the rural banks. And also, we also host a lot of the data center IT infrastructure of the rural banks, and it will give us the opportunity, to invest more in the IT sector, get the necessary equipment in place so that we can enhance their service provision. So within the 5-year period, we've been making several attempts at getting additional money to the bank, it's been difficult. But once they are our shareholders, we have to come back to them so that they subscribe to additional shares. And through that, we believe that we can expand the scope of business.
Mr. Ewua challenged the chief executive officers of rural and community banks to take issues of fraud in the banking sector seriously. The maiden meeting brought together CEOs of rural and community banks across the country. Founding president of the association, Hayatuddin Audu, stressed the importance of the association to the country's banking sector.
Collectively, we recognize that there is so much strength in unity. And so all along, we have been yearning for this kind of opportunity where we can come together, then we harness our effort collectively. And so our greatest objective is using our numbers so that we actually become one of the leading force in ensuring that our individual institution, that's the rural and community bank, thrive. And as much as possible also, we are able to contribute our quota to the local economy across all the catchment area where we individually operate, which we think collectively fits in to the economic or the financial inclusion that government has always been touting as the engine of growth and then the key or mainstay that would help our economy to thrive.
The association aims at promoting best practices and ensuring rural and community banks play their effective roles in the economy.
City TV is live. On DSTV, go to channel 363. On GoTV, access City TV on channel 182. On a digital TV, please press the menu button on the remote control and run a new search on your TV. Take note that without an antenna, you cannot access City TV on your television. City TV can be accessed on a free-to-air digital box like the GoTV and StarTimes box. City TV, it's your world.
Leadership of the National Tipper Drivers Association of Ghana has announced an upward adjustment of their service charge by about 50%. The association says the move comes on the back of the increment in fuel prices coupled with increases in the cost of spare parts, which they say is having an adverse effect on their businesses.
According to the leadership of the association, they risk being kicked out of business as a result of the continuous increment in fuel prices and the rise in spare parts costs. They say they reached a point where they are left with no option than to increase their prices. According to the chairman of the association, Kadri Inusa, although they have increased their service charge by a little over 50%, they will continue to increase their prices if the price of fuel continue to increase.
When you go to somewhere like Shedru, going to pick a son to Kaswa, look at the distance. You buy almost 600-700 CDs out of diesel, okay? And then you buy the son to almost 400. It's almost 10 million. So we don't afford our seats. It's very difficult for us. These days you can't afford 300 and say you are going to Unibuy and count. No. These days you afford almost 700.
It's difficult for you?
It's very difficult. My drivers are crying. So we are pleading the customers to at least understand us a little bit. If the petrol is increasing, still we will go up. Because these trucks, our spare parts come from Europe. They also sell it in dollars. You see, so still we have a problem about that. So we have to see up and help the car owners because they afford the money to buy the trucks for us. We don't have it. You see, somebody may put a huge money into business like transport, and at the end of the day, haven't get anything. I don't think he will rather go on. You see, so we are also helping so that the owners can afford many trucks for us.
He again indicated that issues of illegal sand winning is hindering the progress of their work, adding that a task force will soon be set up to monitor and arrest persons who engage in such activities, destroying their work.
So this task force, what is going to be their work?
Yeah, this task force is going to work about those things. Yeah, they are going to see up and then see if the contractor doesn't have a original papers, you will never go there, or you will not allow the drivers to go and pick a sand over there. So there will going to be a punishment. That is the reason why we formed this task force. Because sometimes police come and arrest us and ask us about this way bill. Some contractors doesn't have the way bill. Well, because we rush and go, you see, you take a car from here to Uniba. You go, the contractor doesn't have a way bill. You can't come empty again. You have to afford it and come.
Some members of the association also spoke to City News about their challenges and how they want authorities to help in addressing them.
Mineral Commission task force will come and arrest us. Why? Because we are conveying material from unauthorized place. Why we as a conveyance, we don't know the right people working over there, whether they have permits or not. Instead for the assembly and the Mineral Commission to team up and do such job, they rather leave them and pursue with the drivers, which we think is not the best. So the government have to show some concern or put some force on the Mineral Commissions to enforce all those legal miners, to stop all those legal mining.
The mines, at times, some of their laws, we find it, we find it difficult to cope with them. About our contractors too, most of the time, at times they used to increase the materials for us. Often, mostly, all the time they used to increase, but we cannot increase it. So now that the fuel is very expensive, we decided to increase our prices so that that also makes sales to our car owners.
Let me ask you, how did you feel during your last visit to the fuel station? It's such a relief to see how fuel prices have dropped after weeks of consistent price hikes. For me, I've been trying to figure out how many more liters this recent reduction, which was about 30 to 60 pesos per liter, would give me. The Chamber of Petroleum Consumers Ghana (COPEC), on the other hand, is appealing to transport operators to not go ahead with plans to increase transport fares. COPEC is confident that prices will drop further soon, and I like the sound of that. Some oil marketing companies, per City Business News checks, reduced their prices between 30 and 60 pesos a litre over the weekend. This was after an earlier projection by the Chamber of Petroleum Consumers Ghana (COPEC) of an up to 6% drop. Consumers seemed very elated about the development as they believed it would give them some respite even though they wanted a further reduction. About a week ago, transport operators hinted of another increment in fares due to frequent increases in fuel prices, which they lamented were negatively hampering their operations. The Executive Secretary of COPEC, Duncan Amwa, is however appealing to them to maintain prices of transport fares as he believes the cost of fuel in the country is likely to drop further in the coming months.
We would like to plead with them. We are mindful of the sacrifices they have made for Ghanaians through these difficult moments. Thankfully, what I can assure them is that prices are likely to decline for the next 2-3 windows. So instead of going to increase fares, that would increase the baselines for food, for services and everything within the country. We would only plead that they hold on for a few more days to see what the pumps would definitely throw at all of us.
He, however, urged oil marketing companies in the country not to hold back in further lowering their prices.
Is that the OMCs, the BDCs, should be mindful that we are watching. We would not be any charitable if they decided not to give these reductions at the pumps due to what they often term as, recoverable losses or whatever margins that they lost in previous windows. We are hoping that the reductions today will reflect today at the pumps and we would not have to wake up the next morning with any further excuses.
If you live along the Accra-Tema train track, I'm sure you've recently heard the loud sounds of the horn of the train. Well, this is because the management of the Ghana Railway Company Limited has commenced operations along the track. It has, however, stated that it will in the coming days increase the fares of the train shuttle service from Accra to Tema after 2 years of suspending its operations.
The train shuttle services are back. This morning, a train has been moving from Tema through to Accra. It's transited through Achimota station where we met it. We've been speaking to officials and as well as commuters on this day as the shuttle services resumes, and they have been sharing the excitement with us.
Yeah, we're happy. We've made a point today simply because people thought GRCA workers don't do anything because the train was not running, but we were working behind the scenes, working on the track, working on the locomotives, working on the coaches, just to make sure that when we come on the track, we can at least pick passengers to and fro. So we are happy.
From your monitoring and your observation, what's the mood among passengers and everyone?
As you know, today is the first day, and we don't have much passengers on board. And I think as we move on, they will know and come on board, and they will be happy because for some time now the train has not moved.
The coach, though, I was hoping to see one of those new ones. This one looks pretty old, right?
Yeah, I think this one is a conventional one.
Yeah.
And it's a
How old is this, by the way?
Currently, I can't tell you exactly data, but it was 90s. Yeah, so we have a new one at the dual user, which is, we have some small technical hiccups that we are doing, repairing on it, and very soon that will be on track.
Can you give people an idea of what these technical hitches were? Because then we are saying the trucks, the trains, they were not running because of COVID. Yeah. And we've had 2 years. So if you are coming back today, you should be back with your best. So what are these technical challenges?
That technical challenges, whenever the track is lined up without the movement of the trains, we have a lot of things going on. At the same time too, from Accra to Tema, it's almost an industrial area, so human activities will also cause some of the technical problems.
It's been 2 years.
Even 2 years. So that is why, as we have started, the manual will be able to determine and will be able also to solve it.
3 cities and 5 cities.
3 cities and 5 cities.
From Tema to Accra.
Yeah.
Is this sustainable for business? I mean, it's good for the passenger. Exactly. From the business point of view, is it great?
No, you see, when we talk about the Ghana Railway Company Limited, it's a profit venture, yet we also think of the masses. Yet very soon, I think this price will be going to be reviewed.
Sunyani is such a beautiful and green city, and I have some exciting news from the city for you, because on your next visit there, you could be able to do so by air. The Minister of Transport, Atta-Akyea, has hinted that commercial flights will start operating from the Sunyani airport in the coming months following the completion of the first phase of the rehabilitation works of the airport. He spoke about this when he paid a working visit to the facility.
The Sunyani airport was shut down in 2015 after the runway became unconducive for use by aircraft. The runway of the newly rehabilitated Sunyani airport has been extended from 1,280 meters to 1,400 meters. The Minister of Transport, Atta-Akyea, during his tour of the facility was accompanied by the Bono Regional Minister, Destina Osu-Banahine, and the Managing Director of the Ghana Airport Company Limited, Pamela Jamsintete. The Minister of Transport, Atta-Akyea, spoke to the media after the visit.
Like I said, aviation industry is a very high regulatory standard industry, and if we miss any of the standards, it means that human life are at stake. That is why the government closed it down, and we decided that it was time for us to renovate this airport. But for now, what we have done is that the aircraft or the airlines can come here whilst we look at the rest of the work, and we are going to do it in such a way that you bring this airport to its best standard, that it will be fit for the purpose of it. So for now, what we have done is enough.
The Managing Director of the Ghana Airport Company Limited, Pamela Jamsintete, expressed her joy at the completion of the first phase of the rehabilitation works.
We are delighted. We're delighted to be here today and feeling very proud
that our airport is ready to start operations. We believe that the contractor and the consultant have delivered on time and to a very high standard. We are just waiting to start operations because it means a lot to us as Ghana Airports to also be able to earn the revenue that comes from a key place like Sunyani. We have a lot of the questions, a lot of calls coming from the domestic airlines wanting to come here. And so we are thrilled that today, as we are here to do the inspection, we'll go back with good news. And in a few days' time, this airport too will be up and running. And like all our other airports, will be earning us good revenue for Ghana. Thank you very much.
The herbal medicine industry is a fast-growing space that employs a lot of people while contributing in diverse ways to the Ghanaian economy. Despite the numerous employment benefits it offers, the producers of herbal medicines are struggling with Ghanaian populace accepting their products. But why is this the case, and what could be the way forward?
The production of herbal medicine has long existed in Ghana. While many go by approved standards, others have infiltrated the market with fake products. This has affected the general acceptability of herbal medicines, as many people have the perception that they are inferior to other pharmaceutical products imported into the country. A leading herbal medicine producer in Ghana, Group Chief Executive Officer of Tabia Group of Companies, Dr. Christian Kwesiajiman, is thus urging the President to encourage the patronage of herbal medicines approved by the Food and Drugs Authority to give life to the industry.
I like the way when the President said, oh, we should eat dawa and the rest. We have the Ministry of Health. They can, come in, Ghanaians, you the herbal practitioners, even the mouth of words, when they have something like their workshop or whatever that they do, they say, okay, it's good to use the herbal medicines that FDA has approved. You see, if somebody like this says something like this, each and every one, because we have our trust or belief in them. So if a health minister says, oh, when you are sick and you go to hospital or you go to lab and they can, let's say they get parasite in your system, go to hospital, or the doctors should prescribe the herbal medicine that has been approved by FDA. You see, doctors should prescribe the herbal medicines that has been approved by FDA for any ailment that the person will bring. I think it will encourage everybody, even we the producers, to do it very well.
As the company has begun exporting herbal medicines to many countries, he believes encouraging its patronage will open up employment opportunities to many Ghanaians and will boost the local economy.
We get the attention that it deserves. Herbal medicine will do a whole lot of things to help this country, not only our health, but the economy too. Because we produce the herbal medicine in terms of healing, that people will get their health, good health from it. Because even if there has been something that when you go to hospital and they even admit you, and when it's about for you to die, the doctors will tell you there's nothing we can do, go home and die. But this person will come to read the herbal practitioners and the person will get better.
He wants stakeholders to create an enabling environment to help the herbal medicine industry thrive.
Everybody is buying it. Even some of the white people are also using Tabia outside Ghana, like Europe, America, and African countries here too. So it means that if we're able to develop it well, we will also get something. We will look at the numbers of employees that we've gotten here. If we get any help or any push, we will be the one to to employ a lot of people to come in.
Digitization is fast gaining grounds in Ghana as many agencies and businesses are adopting it progressively. On the other hand, Some unscrupulous persons are taking advantage of some loopholes that digitalization presents to commit cybercrimes and defraud people in diverse ways. To stop this trend, cybersecurity firm Atta-Akyea Bureau is of the view that stakeholders must deliberately invest in training internal auditors and IT professionals to manage technology risks.
Despite the ease of doing business through virtual platforms and the numerous opportunities technology offers, there are some inherent vulnerabilities that should be critically looked at. E-Crime Bureau has thus stressed the need to pay serious attention to this. Speaking to City Business News, Philip Dankwa, the acting principal consultant at E-Crime Bureau, says internal auditors and IT professionals at various agencies and departments should be well trained to prevent risks that have the potential of affecting businesses negatively.
You can recognize that technology can have its own inherent vulnerabilities. So for internal auditors, the question is, how do we equip them to also advise management, also advise the boards, that they report to on some of the risk exposures and what they need to be doing. And also on the side of the people that we have entrusted technology into, the end users, the IT professionals that, ensure that the systems are well implemented, the solutions are working as they should. They need to be aware that they ought to be subjected to some audit at some point. So from both the internal and an external audit perspective, cybersecurity is very key to their operations. And the whole import of this program is to also ensure that people get the fundamentals when it comes to cybersecurity.
He's hopeful that the training his outfit is offering to some internal auditors will yield fruits. He is, however, urging government to see the need to equip internal auditors, especially as it is championing a digitalization agenda.
By and large, for stakeholders, especially for government that is driving a lot of digitalization, we have a lot of policy, we have the laws in place, because now we have a Cybersecurity Act, the 1038, which is fully implemented by the Cybersecurity Authority. It's important that the stakeholders also understand the context within which technology should work, especially taking into consideration the laws that have been put in place. Once we know the regulation, once we know the law, once we know the technology, once we know the systems and people, we are able to put all these things together to ensure that our cyberspaces are safe.
For the internal auditors, they believe there is indeed the need for all internal auditors to be equipped to ensure they are well placed to identify and block certain actions by fraudsters early enough, since they will be able to predict some criminal activities well ahead of time. The president of the Institute of Internal Auditors Ghana, Atta-Akyea, says this will put the internal auditors in a position to make them add value to the organizations. As a result of this, she wants management to support and equip the internal auditors.
We want people to know that internal auditing is not about pre-auditing. Internal auditing is not about post-auditing. But internal audit is adding value to the organization, providing the necessary insight and even foresight. You look ahead, look at the trends and predict some of the risk that may come and advise management to act accordingly. So this is it. And we want management to support the internal auditors. We want management to equip the internal auditors, allow them to pay for them to attend such trainings, and also the audit committee members, so that the internal auditors and the audit committee will be able to add the needed value to the organization.
Atta-Akyea believes with digital marketing being common on social media, the social media space needs to be audited as well.
As we are here, people are now getting to know that, even social media, there are a lot of things we have to do. We need to audit the social media. We thought that social media is just social media, but a lot of things go into social media. Yes, it is there. We will audit it and we will let people know. You audit it in the space. You see, you will look at how people assess if it is an Instagram or if it is WhatsApp. Even people can put their own things there, not sanctioned by the organization. Somebody can fake to put an information on social media WhatsApp or Facebook, you may think that it's from the organization. That is why mostly they come out to say that we don't have anything to do with this thing that was posted. Because if you keep an eye on the social media platforms you have, if there is anything going different, you would see it. And we are there to provide that kind of service to the organization.
Well, that will be all for today's edition of the Business Weekly Show here on City TV, your most watched business show in the country. For more business news stories, check out our website, citybusinessnews.com, or don't miss out on the Business Dashboard, which airs on City TV at 10 p.m. sharp every weekday, with a repeat the following day at 7 and 10:30 a.m. My name is Michael Obodu. Let's connect on Twitter at @mobodu. Catch you same time next week. Stay safe, stay informed. Bye-bye.